Hi, welcome back to 16RC Tank Workshop. In the last video I showed you the new motion pack for the Panzer IV. It's the latest brushless system from Armortek. I showed you how I assembled the motion pack and bench tested it. In this video we're going to look at fitting it to the Panzer IV. See if we come across any problems. I can tell you in advance there is a major problem, so stay tuned to see what that problem is. In this video, we're removing the track, sprockets, wheels and gear case and fitting the new brushless motors. We'll have a look at taper locks, batteries and connections, switches, and installing the full motion pack, including turret rotation motor and elevation motor with brackets. So here we have the Panzer IV. It's been quite a few years since I've done anything with this. It's almost complete, but still quite a bit of work to do on it, still more detailing. When I started working on this I didn't have a lathe or a milling machine, so there's parts where I can go back and make some improvements. So first let's get the turret off, the top deck off, and we'll have a look inside. So you can see I've already started to make a firewall. The batteries will fit in this end. The instructions for the motion pack suggest putting the batteries in the back, electronics in the centre, motors will go up front, so it helps balance the weight out. You can see there are already motor mounts fitted. These came with the Panzer IV kit and would have been for the brushed motors. But the brushless motors came with a new mounting kit, so these will need to be removed. To remove the motor mounts, I'll need to take off the tracks, take off the drive sprocket and also the gear case. Some of the screws for the mount are located behind the gear case, but I'll need to remove it anyway to fit the new motors. I'll need to remove one of the pins. And that's the track removed. And now same again on this side. And next we'll remove the hubcap. Most of these screws are dummies. The hubcap is just held on in I think 3 or 4 places. And then we can see the taper lock. To remove the taper lock off the shaft, I need to fit one of the screws into this third hole. Hopefully it'll come off fairly easily. They've been fitted for quite a long time now. So that's the first sprocket wheel off. I think there was some paint sticking the taper lock in place. Hopefully the second one will come off a bit easier. And there's hubcap off. And this one's coming very easily. That's it. Make sure you don't lose the key. Just to cover a little bit about taper locks and how drive wheels are usually fitted to Armortek vehicles. Here we can see the gear case from the Panzer IV. The main drive gear. The sprocket fits on this shaft, and the shaft is held in place with two of these bearings. They're glued into the gear casing. This piece of key steel holds the taper lock on the shaft and stops it from rotating. So the taper lock, it's secure against rotation on the shaft, and once it's locked down, you've also got a lateral lock. It's a really secure way to fit the sprockets. I know it gives people problems at times, but it works quite well. Once you've found your place that you want to mount the sprocket on the shaft, fit the grub screws into these two holes. These are the locking holes. I put a little bit of oil on the grub screws. Carefully thread them in. The sprocket is usually made of aluminium, so you don't want to strip the threads. So make sure your threads are lined up well. And gradually tighten. Tightening these will pull the sprocket onto the taper lock. Gradually tighten a little bit each side. And now that's fitted fast and spinning well. Once you've driven for a while, check again. Make sure they haven't come loose at all. Maybe tighten a bit more. To remove a taper lock, remove the grub screws. Certainly when I was taking this off the vehicle, it had been on for about 10 years. It hadn't been driven, so it probably never over tightened. but it was quite difficult to get it off. To remove it, you fit the grub screw into the top screw hole, and this should push the sprocket off the taper lock. You can feel, once you go a certain depth, you should feel a bit of a pop, and then the taper lock releases. Sometimes you might need to put a block on the front of the sprocket, give it a few light taps with a hammer. That should pull the sprocket off the taper lock. And there it is. You can see on the taper lock itself, the two locking holes are not threaded. The idea of this is to pull the sprocket onto the taper lock, whereas the other one is threaded and bottomed out. When you screw the grub screw into this hole, it should push on the bottomed out section on the sprocket and push the sprocket off the taper lock. So that covers that. I hope some find that useful. I'm not an expert on taper locks, that's just from my experience of them. So next will be to move the drive case. I'm just going to flip the mudguard out of the way. These are sprung like the originals. These are made in the workshop. And then start undoing these nuts. Where visible, I have quite a few castellated nuts fitted. So all the screws are out, and just removing the casing. The bearings are glued into the casing, but it's moving freely. And now you can see the 4 screws that hold the motor mounts. So let's remove the mounts. And here's the motor mount removed. So I'll do the same on the other side, off camera. I've applied some blue thread lock to the screws that will fit the motor mounts. It's important when fitting the mounts to remember the spacers if they're required in your vehicle. The purpose of these spacers, they fit between the motor mount and the side of the hull on the inside. It's to prevent this gear from rubbing against the gear casing. In the case of the Panzer IV, it was a 2mm thick spacer. And that's the motor securely fitted. The gear casing will go on over this. Here you can see both motors are now in place. The spacers have been fitted. Plenty of room inside the hull. Next will be to get the gear casings back in place. Hopefully the spacers left sufficient room. You might also notice I've repainted the base of the vehicle to this light German grey. It'll tidy up the interior a little bit. Here you can see the gear. At this, even with the spacer, it's sticking out far too much. It's coming through 18.5 millimeters. Measuring the depth of the gear casing, it's 12.28. It needs to be back almost 7 millimeters so that it doesn't interfere. But you can see here, as is, the motors are already quite close together. Motors is about 18 millimeters, and these motors rotate so they can't be touching, so this is going to be a problem. Basically I need a bigger spacer than 2 millimeters, closer to 8 millimeters either side. So here you can see some of the layout proposed. This will be the location of the batteries. I've started work on this firewall section. I'll be putting in other parts to this, which will enable the fitting of various switches and possibly some future additions. The motors are in place, but there is a major problem with them. I'll have to contact Armortek to try to resolve the issue, find out how to go ahead with this. But for now, it's impossible to fit the gear casing on the outer hull. You can see with the deck in place, with the large hatches, access is quite good to the batteries. I also intend here to fit my charging port and on-off switch. I'll most likely fit the LED indicator here as well. There's another hatch here, so I'm not too sure what I'll fit in here yet. I don't have a sound system yet, so I don't know the size of the sound system from Armortek, but I'll be able to fit quite a few components in this section. Next we're going to work out a layout for the interior components. The Panzer IV doesn't have torsion bar suspension. It's got leaf spring suspension, so all the suspension components are on the outside of the vehicle. This leaves a fairly flat floor. I still like to mount the electronics off the floor, so I'm going to put a dummy floor in. The ESCs have a heat shrink here, so I don't want to cover that in. I want to let air circulate around these. So let's have a look at what I'm thinking about doing and the materials I'm thinking of using. Here we have the main control unit. I've cut a piece of aluminium, and this will be mounted slightly off the floor. I've cut another 2 pieces of aluminium for the motor ESCs. As you can see, I've made a cutout to accommodate air circulation around the heatsink. I don't want the heat build up. Again, these will be raised off the floor slightly. And also mount for the ESCs for the turret elevation and rotation, which again will be mounted slightly off the floor. For the floor, I have this nice piece of plastic sheet left over from another project, so I'll raise it maybe 1 centimeter clear of the floor. All the other components will be mounted to this. On my first plate, I've marked out the positions where I'm going to drill some holes, so I'll do that now. Here's the first plate drilled, and it'll mount here with standoffs underneath. And that's the first piece onto the board. Next I'm going to fit the mount for the ESCs for rotation and elevation. I'm going to use double-sided tape to mount the ESCs into these positions, but I'm not happy with these exposed resistors. They look fairly delicate. So I've made another sheet which will go over this on spacers and give some protection. So here we have these ESCs fitted to the board. They're stuck with double-sided tape. They're connected to the 15 amp connection. These connections will connect to the motors and also the ring connection for the elevation motor. I'll also fit the receiver on a small standoff in a convenient location. Here we have the ESCs for turret rotation and gun elevation. Because I feel they're a little bit delicate with these resistors sticking out, I think something could damage them. I put this protective sheet over them, but there's still plenty of air circulating around. Here's where the wires will connect, and the servo wires. So I'll fit the servo somewhere fairly central. For the next stage, I'll need to get this fitted into the hole. I fitted the electronics. The deck is back in place. Opening one of the hatches, you can see easy access to battery connections, charger input, on-off switch, LED indicator. Through the other hatch, you can see the space here for maybe another switch, maybe for lights. There's plenty of space in here maybe for a sound unit, speakers, my cables from the main control unit. run into this area. The intention will be to fit an XT60 socket here, like the one I fitted for the charger. And then I'll be able to connect and disconnect easily from the power unit. So let's get the deck off and we'll have a look inside. Now the deck off, you can get a full view of the interior. There's still plenty of space for additional electrics. You can see here the layout, the ESCs for the main drive motors. They're up on 4mm aluminium standoffs from the dummy floor. The receiver is mounted on its own base, again with 4mm standoffs. The ESCs for gun elevation and turret rotation, they're fitted on an aluminium plate, again on standoffs, and they've got this protective cover, but there's plenty of air circulation in here. The main power unit, again it's on standoffs. I've used this plastic sheeting. I'll be using quite a bit of this in future. It's much easier to cut than aluminium, and I think looks better and cleaner. You can see the drive motors are still fitted, but still having problems with the fitting of those. To the rear we've got the battery compartment, my XT60 socket for charger connection, on-off switch, LED indicator. I'll put another one of these XT60 sockets here, connected to the battery lead. I'll replace this one so that it'll be possible to connect the power unit just by plugging in, and disconnecting just plug out. Now you can see I have the turret rotation motor fitted on its mount to the top deck. The turret rotation motor connects direct to its ESC. Now placing the turret slide ring. This is supposed to be fitted with adhesive as far as I know. I'm going to drill some small holes and put in some brass countersunk screws, M2 or M2.5. And next, fit the turret back in place, carefully engaging the gear. Here we have the gun elevation mount in place. Here we have the coil of wiring for connecting up the gun elevation. It would also connect to some other turret functions, such as recoil, but I don't have those functions. There's quite a bit of wire here. But one thing I've seen that I haven't had on my Tigers is this fitting. This main wire will be inside the hull. I can coil it up somewhere out of the way, but this section, when it's fitted to the turret, I'll have to make some sort of fitting. This can rotate, so the turret can rotate 360 degrees while the wires below stay still. In my Tigers everything moved and got tangled up, so this is much better. So I'll make some sort of bracket to fit this. Here we have the elevation bracket fully complete. This is the bracket I've added, and it takes this rotation section. So the wires in the lower part stay static, they're not tangled up in anything, while the turret is allowed to rotate. Thanks again for watching. I'll put a video here and another one here, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button.